All right, here we go. So welcome to day one, Park and Wildland Management. This is Forestry 420. And goal for today is mainly to clarify in everybody's mind what this weird hybrid schedule is going to look like. So we'll be doing class online, and we'll get into more detail here in a sec. But um, uh, let's just get into it. All right, so if you head to the course website, which is mycourses.siu.edu, same URL it's been at for a while. That'll bring up D2L, and if you log into this class and take a look at the content section, the first visible section is course info, and on there I put two different versions of the same document, syllabus. So we've got the Word document and the PDF according to whatever's handy for you on your phone or tablet or laptop. And we'll spend a little while going through that and answering any questions that you guys have in Zoom. And then after we're done chatting for today, we'll transcode this Zoom meeting and then upload that to the course website as well for all the people who can't make the live Zoom meeting. So that's the asynchronous part of it. All right, so to recap, head over to D2L or mycourses.siu.edu, load up Park and Wildland Management, Forestry 420, and we'll get into it. So take a sec to open up the syllabus. A lot of the stuff is pretty standard. I don't think you're going to have any huge surprises, but this year is kind of weird. You know, it is the COVID apocalypse, and you know, things are a little bit moved around. So we'll talk about our schedule and our structure a little bit, and then get into the kind of the actual content of the class. You know, the things we'll be talking about all semester long. So I am Dr. Logan Park. Email address is logan.park@siu.edu. That is, of course, always open. I think that a lot of millennials and Zoomers don't really like using email that much, and so you can also just text me directly. My cell phone number is 618-303-2799, and that'll get to me right away. I'm usually at least somewhere near my cell phone or some kind of screen, and that'll get in front of me pretty fast, a lot faster than email typically. Both are confidential, so the Zoom is kind of a public forum, just like if we're sitting in class together. But if you have anything that you need to at me about one-on-one, then text message or email is fine. Let's see. We'll be doing office hours kind of in the same format as this Zoom optional meeting right now, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of on class days, which are Mondays and Wednesdays. So 1 to 4 p.m., I'll just kind of park myself on here, Dr. Park, no pun intended, on Zoom, and just be available if you need to drop in and ask a question, or you can send an email or text, you know, at that point as well. No big deal. So this class is hybrid. It's a senior level and graduate student level class. So I think we have one or a couple of grad students taking this. Welcome. And our hybrid format is specific to this class. So everybody's doing a little bit differently this semester. We'll talk about what we're doing so you can have clear expectation and know always when and where and how we are doing. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, again, I'll be here in Zoom, kind of going through some class content, recording that for whatever questions you have. Somebody else in the class is probably wondering the same thing, so go ahead and fire questions away. That's fine. And the rest of most of the lecture content is sort of already ready to go and will show up shortly on D2L, our course website. And you can work through that stuff kind of at your own pace, but in sort of a loose order, kind of week by week. So each week I'll post an announcement on the front page of the website and of the course website, and that'll have kind of an ordered and organized list of stuff that we're basically working through that week. Typically each week's stuff kind of also spills a little bit into the following week for folks who can't get to the class content, you know, maybe because you're working a lot. If you can't get to it until, you know, Friday, Saturday of that week when it's assigned, that's fine. We can talk about it the first part of the following week as well. Not a big deal. As a part of the online class, we're mostly going to use just a couple of tools from D2L. I hate online classes as much as you probably do, so We're going to use this as kind of a necessary evil and then focus our intense efforts on our lab sessions, which are going to be together on and off campus on our field trip, just like with wilderness management earlier. So if you are taking both of those classes, the structure is going to be the same for both, although the content's pretty different. So we'll use the content section, so that'll store all the PowerPoints and video links and links to YouTube content and some of the like solo exercises, the field exercises that we have for the semester. And then we'll use the discussion forums and just kind of type out 1-2 paragraph responses to a bunch of different discussion questions we have. A lot of the stuff that we talk about in park and wildlife management, this class, is pretty cut and dry. Like climate change, climate forcing, climate destabilization does not care about your political stance, doesn't care about the power of your hopes and dreams. It's just going to wreck face. So, just not a lot of really debate to be had there, I guess. But for some other things, some of the management trade-offs are a lot more gray than they are black and white. And they are real trade-offs. Like you get this benefit at this cost and this problem. Or you could get this other set of benefits for this other set of costs and problems. And that's okay. Like that's why management, forest management, park and wildlife management specifically, that's why it's a profession. It's more than just a set of rote check boxes to fill. The world is complex and ever changing. So we'll wrestle with some of that complexity, that ambiguity in that class, and hopefully you find it pretty satisfying. But we'll also have some concrete, sort of well-bounded skills to work through as well. So that'll be the content section, the discussion section, and pretty much the only other thing we're going to use the course website for are very occasional web quizzes. They're going to be short. They're going to be retakeable most likely, and it'll be a good chance for you to kind of give me an understanding of how you're tracking with stuff and so forth. We'll talk about the grading structure of the class here in a bit, but the quizzes are not something to fear or dread or anything like that. Generally, they're pretty lightweight. So we use those on the course website. I'm probably not going to have anybody using the, the Respondus lockdown browser or whatever. Yeah, that's a waste of all of our time and stress. So let's not do that. They'll just be like a Word document that you download and fill out, something like that. And for any extended like project work throughout the semester, that'll be the same format. So like Word documents and discussion posts. Okay, so the main takeaway for the course website, because we're online and hybrid, is to always look at the course front page, which has the announcements, kind of front and center there. I'll always post anything that you need to do in order by week, and it'll be nicely, cleanly laid out for you so you know exactly what to do, generally when to do it. Typically for something that's posted, you have about a week to wrestle with that piece of it, and then we need to move on to the next thing. And you don't need to go, there will be over 1,000 course files. We're not going to use all of them. So just use the stuff that's linked in those announcements pages. You'll be fine. Okay, I'll take you right through. Let's see. So that's the online part. These Zoom meetings are optional. If you can make them, great. Ask questions. Again, some of your classmates are probably wondering the same thing. And if you can't make these Zoom meetings because you have, a difficult job this semester to help pay for tuition and stuff like that, I respect that. A lot of us are coming from that situation, so I want to be respectful of your time and energy. And for that reason, these Zoom meetings are optional, and I'm always going to record them and then upload them to the course website for all the folks who couldn't make it. Typically, I'll upload it this afternoon, or if it's a really huge file, it'll take overnight to upload, and then it'll be available on the course website, and I'll link it from the announcements page so that everybody knows exactly where it is without having to dig around on the course website, because life is too short for that. Okay, the face-to-face part of the class, the reason why it's a hybrid class instead of purely online, is that this is a management class. It's got some practical hands-on, like spatial and kinesthetic, like body movement learning type skills. So we can't throw that stuff online and call it valid, in my opinion. Also, the labs are more fun than sitting and listening to me talk. So let's get together, and I will always announce a day or two before when we're actually going to meet during this time window, this 2 to 4 p.m. on Mondays and or Wednesdays. Basically going to base that on the weather. So when it looks like it's going to be generally clear, like it is going to be this coming Wednesday, so 2 days from now, we'll plan on meeting at our classroom, which is 102 Ag Sciences, McElroy Auditorium. So if you downloaded the room information like earlier in the summer before basically last Thursday, we had to switch a whole bunch of rooms around to try and get everybody into larger classrooms so that we could all socially distance. Well, we're not going to really have to worry about spacing out in the classroom too much, although definitely do that. We're basically going to use 102 as a meeting point and then head outside and practice whatever hands-on skill it is, because that's the whole point. But again, I will always announce a day or two in advance so you know whether or not you need to plan to come into campus that day for this class. Hopefully, it's not going to be every day, and so you can save some gas money, you can save some time if your other classes are all online or hybrid similarly. Okay. And if I need to cancel something, cancel a class session because the weather report changes and gets much worse, like it can't be safe for us outside, like if there's an electrical storm, something like that, then not a big deal. We will we'll tackle that separately. Okay, so that's a lot real quickly. Matt or Jessica, do you have any questions about the format of the class, like this weird sort of online, offline, online or face-to-face hybrid class? Any questions with that so far? If not, we'll just keep on keeping on. Or if you do have any questions, now's a good moment to tackle those before we get too far from it.
No, I'm good.
All right.
No, I don't have any questions either.
Yes. So far, so good. All right. Let's jump into the actual content then. Like what we came for. The purpose of this class is basically a restatement out of the catalog, to dig deeper into the arts and sciences of providing high quality recreation opportunities and experiences for a couple of 100 million recreation visits per year just in the federal land management agencies alone, close to 1 billion. And that's a lot just in the United States. When a country like China, for example, recently opened a national park within the last decade or so, and by their second year, they were getting 23 million visits per year to that one park. Like that is so completely out of scale with anything anywhere else in the world. That's hard. So imagine the forest ecosystem under the pressure of 23 million pairs of feet, all walking around and maybe leaving litter, running into wildlife running into them at high speed, puncturing lungs and stuff. Like it gets, as they say, cray, real bad, real fast. And so this class is all about just figuring that out. Like, what do we do to get in front of that and to make it work? So how do we provide high quality recreation opportunities and experiences for the human beings, but at the same time, protect that natural, historic, so pre and post invention of writing, cultural resources, the ecosystems, the wildlife species, also the less desirable but still functionally important wildlife species that people don't care about as much but need to be there. How do we do all of that? That's a lot. So we'll examine the fundamentals regarding history. Just a quick introductory refresher out of Forestry 220, Intro to Rec Management. And very quickly, we'll move on from that into the current research and modern high-tech and technical professional practices of not just park rangers, but also the foresters, the superintendents, the specialists, the district foresters, everybody who's doing this stuff, wildlife habitat managers. We're all managing the humans as well as the trees and everything else. We're going to put a lot of emphasis on the U.S. National Park Service in this class because for a lot of reasons, historical and modern, They are the preeminent, they are the foremost, the leading park and wildland management organization in the world, and they're here. So we'll focus heavily on them. And they're a very good buddy these days, the U.S. Forest Service. We'll talk a little bit about the National Wilderness Preservation System, but the other class that I teach in the fall, the National Wilderness Management, Forestry 470, is obviously going to be the deep dive on that one. So a few of you are taking both of these classes, and in particular on days like today, you're going to hear some overlap between those two classes. Like the syllabus is kind of the same for both, but we'll diverge pretty quickly between those two classes on the day-to-day stuff that park rangers, that backcountry rangers, that park interpreters, you know, the facilities managers, the motor pool guys, you know, what everybody does, splits up pretty quickly. And we'll focus mostly on the federal level because they're the big hiring groups. By the end of the semester, we're going to get into the federal hiring season, the first couple of waves of stuff going out on usajobs.gov. And that is tens of thousands, literally tens of thousands of forestry and rec specific management positions out in the field. And your status as a student puts you to the front of the line for a lot of those. So I'll help you kind of get your head on straight for that if that's an option that appeals to you. And yeah, by the end of the semester, you'll be pretty lean and in fighting shape to go after those if you want to. Our course objectives, which are like the more specific list of things that we actually want to accomplish. We want to study the characteristics, the attitudes, motivations, and behaviors, in particular, the behaviors of outdoor recreation users and trends in outdoor recreation use. So when we're dealing with hundreds of millions of visits, maybe one person visits 10 national parks, that counts as 10 visits, or 10 visit days if he spends or she spends 1 day at each, for example, is how we get that number. And those hundreds of millions of folks, if 240 million people are aiming to misbehave across national parks, those parks are going to get thrashed hard because a lot of our resources are actually pretty fragile, surprisingly. So we'll talk about, like, how do we get to that? Like, why do people do stupid things near large wildlife? We'll also explore kind of the opposite of that. So what are some of the threats to the quality of visitor experiences, right? So we want to bring people in to your national park. Say you're the superintendent. We want to have them have a really good time. And we also want to protect the resources, the physical resources involved, like the wildlife. But we also want to protect the experiential resources of the humans that are there. We want them to not just be present, just be warm bodies and counting heads. We don't want to just like tally up stumps like in certain sort of high level aspects of forest resource management. We want to make sure that the quality of what they're doing and what they're experiencing is pretty top notch. These are the most unique and beautiful places in the country, and in many cases the world. People's experiences should reflect that. Should have a really good time. They should grow. They should be challenged. They should feel small in a good way. All right, so we want to explore threats to the quality of visitor experiences, cultural, archaeological, soil, water, wildlife, vegetation, air quality, night skies, landscapes, and soundscape resources. We'll go through all of that stuff. And we'll explore in lots of detail some effective management frameworks. So how do we actually organize all this info, all this research, all this data, all these techniques that we got? So in the same way that you learn how to cruise timber stands in mensuration, same way you learn how to decide when to rocket net and when not to rocket net wildlife species in wildlife techniques. We have a lot of decision tools and stuff like that for park management as well. So we'll wrestle with those. And there are principles and practices to protect visitor experiences, cultural, historical, archaeological resources, and natural resources, blah, blah, blah. We'll introduce a variety of current park and wildlife management issues and settings. I've got something like 30 different parks as case studies. And so we'll select out of that list a subset of the interesting ones, the controversial ones, the ones where people are in danger, the ones where we have some pretty colossal or epic human fails. So we can kind of learn from that and, avoid some of those problems for the next time, because we should expect a lot of this stuff to come back around. There are relatively few new ideas among visitors at a park. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that helps us be efficient. So We do have one awesome required textbook for this class. While you are ordering that textbook, it is really good. It is super worth it. This is the Bible for outdoor recreation management based on research. It's got a couple of thousand studies all sort of organized and super well explained very briefly, so you don't have to like read 2,000 studies to get the good use out of them. I've scanned and posted our textbook on the course website, and I'll make that available to you guys later on this afternoon so that you can start our first reading assignments while you're waiting for that book to come in. So if you are even remotely possible to work in a park or work in, national forests have super high, a couple 100 million visitation level folks each year across the national forest system. And so you're probably going to be working with people a little bit in some capacity there too. Highly recommend this textbook. It's worth your dime. All right, so let's see. Any other course materials? Usually those will be screenshots of popular news articles like this catastrophe just happened in a park, or this person just fell off a cliff. What happened? I'll post those on the course website so we can all see those. And that stuff will all be indexed in the weekly post for what to work on that week. So you should always have a clear sense of, what's going on this week with the class, even if we're not all meeting together to discuss all the time. If you are a graduate student taking this class, awesome, you're welcome. This is absolutely a graduate level course, and help me adjust this class to dovetail well into your thesis or research project so that this class isn't extra work separate from that. I want to make it dovetail as much as possible, okay? So to the extent that we can copy paste anything out of this class into your thesis or your dissertation, I'm all for it, but I got to understand what you need like focus wise or timing wise out of that. So shoot me an email or a text message if you're a grad student. Set up a time for us to meet, maybe during office hours on Tuesday or Thursday between 1 and 4 or whenever. And we'll get that going for you. Okay, cool. Grading system is pretty standard, like grades on the 10. So 90% and up is an A, 80% and up is B. That's pretty standard for me. And what that does is it puts a little bit of focus on our final exam for later on. So final exam's worth a quarter of your grade, and about halfway through the semester, I'll start the conversation on what format we want that final exam to look like. It could be traditional pen and paper final exam, like the 3-hour slugfest with multiple choice. It could be more like a Jeopardy style game show. It could be, let's write up a park management plan together, and let's wrestle with some of these problems. Let's run some disaster and management scenarios. Let's see what XYZ National Park will look like in 80 years from now at the year 2100, given what we know about climate change and all of that stuff. So be thinking about what kinds of exam formats. This is a real question to you, undergrads and grad students. Be thinking about what exam formats you can shine in. So if that's a traditional pen and paper exam, fine. If it's more like a management plan where you're not answering test questions, but you're showing how you apply some of the stuff that we wrestle with in this class, that's fine. So again, about halfway through this semester, into October, we'll start bringing that up. Participation is huge, but it's weird this semester with COVID-19 and all of that. So in particular, we're gonna have 2 ways for you to really meaningfully contribute to the class. So this class cannot just be me talking at you about all of this stuff. We want to encounter confusing questions in your textbook. Want to disagree with something that I've asserted that doesn't sound right to you. So we'll use the course website, the discussion forum section of that. I'll post some questions on there throughout the semester to kind of get topics going, but by all means, post your own. And then the other way that participation is of course gonna happen for us this semester is the face-to-face, the hybrid portion of this class, instead of it being purely online. So for lab sessions like this coming Wednesday, since the weather report looks clear, hot but clear, and throughout the semester, I'll always, again, announce those a day or two before, so you know how to plan your day that day. And I'll only cancel day of if the weather is pretty bad, or forecast to be pretty bad. And we'll have a lot more interactive ways of you asking questions as you're practicing some of these field skills that we use like daily in forest rec management to run everything down from international biosphere reserves to like city and county parks or something like that. I got $5,000 worth of trail monitoring sensors and stuff in my car right now that we'll use on one of our labs. So, and those are the professional ones used by the Park Service and stuff like that. So for all of those are our class sessions on those days when we can meet safely outside. And again, this coming Wednesday, the weather report looks good, so plan on that. We'll meet at McElroy Auditorium at 2 p.m. and we'll head out. Okay, for those lab sessions and for our field trip, which is separate from our class sessions, field notebook, Write in the Rain, paper recommended. Regular notebook, probably fine. I mean, if I'm generally not holding these when it's pouring down rain, then you don't need waterproof paper, but just as a professional tool, maybe one that you can carry forward to other classes or borrow from another class and use for this one as well. A Write in the Rain notebook is awesome. If you are genuinely strapped for cash and you're pretty sure that you're going to need a Write in the Rain notebook because this is something that you want to go into as a career, then drop me a line confidentially via email or text message. Let me know. I've got a couple of Write in the Rain notebooks kind of left over from some other classes, and I'm happy to pass you one of those so you have the resources that you need. Definitely going to need to show up in closed-toed shoes or boots. I know it's hot right now. It's going to be hot through September and into October. So sandals are nice, but we're going to be going into the forest, and kicking sticks is not how we do things professionally. So closed-toed like work shoes or boots, long work pants, long sleeves. You might be extra comfortable in non-cotton clothing if it does get wet. Cotton's pretty awful. And we're going into tick country because tick country is now everywhere around us and has been for a little while. So I need you to know what tick country and habitats in particular look like grassy, unmowed, open, sunny glades are a big deal for them. Knowledge of tick-borne disease symptoms. So you need to spend a little bit of time Googling around for how you feel when you get sick with ehrlichiosis versus Lyme, or Ehrlichia, or Rocky Mountain spotted fever, or any of those. They are awful, and they've put 3 forestry faculty in the hospital over the years lately. So by all means, know what we're getting into. Nothing to fear, but just be aware of it. Along the same lines, you want to know what different kinds of bug repellents work well for ticks and which ones don't, quite frankly. So there's a difference between DEET and permethrin or other pyrethrin-based contact nerve toxins versus citronella versus picaridin versus some people have advocated the use of dryer sheets. Or if you're not comfortable or willing to use any of those, then understand that that's the risk landscape that we're looking at. Also, and lastly, this is a senior level class and for graduate students, but sometimes we do have students taking this class from a background other than forestry, so you haven't had a chance to take tree ID yet, and you may not know or be able to identify poison ivy, poison oak, sumac, etc., the urushiol producing contact dermatitis, the irritating oil plants. So be able to identify that leaf on and leaf off, because our field trip is most likely to be in leaf off season. So we need to be able to identify those hairy vines on site. Okay, let's talk about the field trip for a sec. So we will have those in this class, have one big one hopefully in this class, and usually that involves Shawnee National Forest or Ozark National Scenic Riverways, about 3 hours, 2 hour west. Mammoth Cave National Park, the Hoosier National Forest isn't super far away either. we'll get together and pick a weekend, a long weekend, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday in October, or probably the first half of November, when most folks in the class can get together and do that. And we'll go car camping, and we'll see a bunch of different techniques and hopefully chat with a couple of folks and a couple of professionals and that sort of thing, and see what this stuff looks like, and kind of a live fire exercise instead of watching videos of this stuff or talking about it online, or practicing some of these field skills on campus with some of these tools. But it feels a little bit different. I find that people learn a little bit faster and better, more thoroughly, when we're actually in a national park or national forest looking at the stuff in production. If we go to a place like Mammoth Cave, for example, it's a world-class, it's a biosphere reserve site, like international designation, but it's also a national park, and it's also a very history-filled place. And it might also be potentially, like everywhere else, filled with kind of the second wave of COVID-19 that we're standing right on the threshold of right now. As everybody's going back to school, pretty much everybody is thinking that this thing is going to just explode once again, but even higher. And with the first round of COVID-19 and that quarantine back in like March and April, if you remember the bad old days, national parks shut down as well. And so did most national forests. And then they started reopening one by one. So if that happens again, if these, wherever we decide to select for our field trip closes down for COVID-19, then we'll change our plans as we get closer to it. There's just no way to know how that's going to go exactly until we do it. So in the absence of total collapse of Western civilization, let's plan on a field trip. It's usually pretty darn fun. We have a good old time cooking around a campfire and stuff like that. Any questions about our hopefully like weekly lab sessions in person together on campus wearing masks? Our in-person field trip later in the semester at some point, we'll pick a date. Any questions about that section, Matt or Jessica?
No, I'm good.
No, I don't have any questions.
Man, you guys are easy going. I like it. All right, so if you do have any questions, let me know. We'll have a couple of quizzes, not usually a big deal. If you find yourself kind of worried about that or struggling, I've been hearing from several students, so if this is you, you're not alone, several students that this online class format sucks for focus and retention and comprehension. And if you're just dying doing this stuff, reach out to me as soon as that is an issue, and I'll work with you. Like, I get it. Professors are not super wild about this either, but we got to do what we got to do. If there's a more specific and structural thing going on, then DSS is a bunch of superheroes. Like, they can get all of our videos captioned and get like a screen reader for you, so you can hear stuff instead of having to read it if you're dyslexic. If you wrestle with ADHD, or if you're hearing impaired or visually impaired, you have some mobility needs or something like that, that's fine. It's whatever. Like, you do you. Not a big deal. I'm not offended by any of that, and I'm not particularly scared by it either. So just let me know confidentially with a text message or an email, and also contact DSS. And the moment you contact DSS, like, this whole set of resources and offices and like grad students and tutors and note takers and stuff, all of that gets mobilized for you. It's all free. And it seems like a pretty good deal. So I don't want this online format to suck any worse than it has to. All right. Final exam, we've already talked about that. Let's see, lab assignments and stuff like that. Since we're mostly hybrid online, that's all going to be typed anyway. Not a big deal. Proofread your work. This is a senior level class, so I don't want to be like your English teacher or grading for grammar and stuff like that, but we're about to turn you loose on the professional world. So if you're not able to spell the beech tree species differently than like the geomorphological feature of a sandy beach, we should probably catch that stuff now before we turn you loose on the wild world. So proofread your work, and never trust spell check. Never. Like, it is a disaster and a crutch that lulls people into a false sense of security. Have a classmate proofread your stuff, and you'll be fine. Let's see. Late assignments are normally penalized, but since this class is asynchronous this semester, meaning we don't all meet at the same place at the same time for the online stuff, you have about that kind of squishy week-long window to wrestle with that week's posted stuff. I'm not really gonna, quite frankly, be standing over you with a stopwatch on submitting things. Get stuff in when you can and keep up. If you find yourself starting to fall behind, and this happened over the summer teaching this class a little bit, a couple of folks were working like 60, 70 hours a week and taking these classes, and they started feeling a little bit behind. Just let me know. I can work with you. I can totally work with you, but let me know as soon as that happens. This gets way harder if I don't hear anything till exam week, okay? So help me help you, Jerry. All right, ethics matter in this class. Follow the University Code of Ethics. Your work must be your own. Don't make me drop the band hammer on you for plagiarism. That's rarely a problem, but when it is a problem, it's like this much of a problem. It's big, and we gotta not let that go. So be ethical, and I will treat you like senior level scholars that you have fought so hard to become. With great respect. Large-scale emergencies happen. I guess I'm not really worried about an on-campus live fire exercise because we're not all on campus. But if something like that should happen, been through that before, just keep your head, follow directions, and arm yourself with whatever's nearby, and we will defend ourselves and then get the heck out of there. All right, so the less we do on that, the better. If this class doesn't check all the boxes that you are looking to check professionally, I think you have a week or two to swap out, and that won't hurt my feelings. Do your thing. If somebody is on the bubble about taking this class or not, go ahead and invite them on in. We can do that, and the more the merrier on the field trips. It's definitely a good time for sure. If this is the only class that I've ever come in contact with you for, I have a hard time getting to know all of the individual students in this class well enough that I can write you a glowing recommendation, and I don't want to half-ass a glowing recommendation for you. I want to be able to say like a couple of pages of detailed stuff about you. So if you are looking at getting in particular like a federal job or applying for stuff towards the end of the semester for next summer, is kind of the timing on that. Be visible, be present, make it to as many of these Zoom sessions as you can. Just help me get to know you a little bit. And I will do my level best to help get you into that sort of that critical transition job, like right after you graduate or for next summer, so you have some federal experience before you graduate. That's key. And I'm happy to do that. Like that's one of my favorite parts of the job. So by all means, help me get to know you a little bit. Let's see. And yeah, this goes for me, but it also goes for every professor. I don't think I'm particularly intimidating, but I do kind of have that like resting bitch face. So I'm usually not actually mad. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. I'm a recreation person. I get to study fun. So if I'm at all intimidating or any of the other professors are intimidating, don't worry about it. We're cool. We're pretty relaxed, and you may not see us congregating around the lunch table as much this semester. So you can just like drop by and ask us questions in the hallway or something like that. But yeah, send us questions just for the sake of it. Remember, we were students too at one point, and we all had to figure out all these same questions that you guys have about what am I going to do when I grow up, and how am I going to put food on the table and stuff like that. We are very happy to help you, and we're here because we want to be here. So yeah, don't let this distance, this online stuff skew you on that. Okay, let's run through the syllabus topics, and we'll go through this as quickly as we can. It's a long list and it's detailed, but that's mostly so I have a good map across all of the things we can talk about. So we won't actually go through this whole list in detail during the semester, but we will have a chance to kind of customize it for your needs. So one of our first assignments, I'll put up a discussion forum question about it, is kind of what are you interested in? Like, what do you think the next step is for you, so that I can kind of tailor and custom fit this class to you guys and gals instead of just like clobbering you over the head with a bunch of topics. Okay, so keep an eye out for that link. All right, we'll tackle some forest rec management field skills. So that list is at the front of this. Knots, bends, hitches, and lashings, how to backpack safely, camp, leave no trace, how as a ranger or an assistant or technician or specialist, different levels of rec management titles, you do things like visitor contacts, like how do you talk with the public? How do you not talk with the public? Like, what are some things to avoid? A lot of us in forestry are pretty strong introverts, and we get it. So, you know, we'll wrestle with the professional side of visitor contact. Stuff like land navigation, map and compass, orienteering. What do you do when your GPS runs out of batteries or you get out of cell phone data? How to design and site or lay in and then build and then maintain and then sunset or shut down backcountry facilities like trails and campsites. There's a lot of technical info that goes into that and a lot of the art of design as well. So we'll wrestle with that. So that's design, surveying, installation, monitoring, maintenance, rehabilitation of all those facilities. We'll talk a little bit about search and rescue because a lot of times park rangers, in particular law enforcement and backcountry rangers, are the tip of the spear for search and rescue. What are a couple of topics on that line? And then stuff like leave no trace. How do you poop in the woods without wrecking the ecosystem? How do you help visitors feel reassured about pooping in the woods if they have a shy bladder? And the other 6 principles as well. There's 7 of them total. I'll put up some kind of just optional review stuff from Forestry 220. So like basic definitions. What do I mean when I say a park versus a wilderness? Not the same thing. Versus a recreation area, not the same thing. What do I mean by the national trail system? All that stuff's all review. Most of you guys have already taken that class. No big deal. So that stuff's all optional. It's just a refresher, and you're free to move through that at your own speed. It's also covers stuff like what are the different federal land management agencies and organizations. There's a ton of them. And there's a whole bunch more than just the U.S. National Park Service doing park and wildlife management. And there are a lot more other agencies employing more park rangers than just the Park Service employs. Like they do awesome stuff, world-class stuff, but they're not the only one at the table. So take a look back through that stuff if you want to. And all that stuff will be online for you on D2L. And then if you scroll down through the syllabus to section 9, look at forest recreation resources. So this is kind of looking at the layer cake of all of the different resources that you as a park ranger, park superintendent, specialist, chief of, trail boss, whatever, you're partially responsible for maintaining and preserving, capital P, preserving, not even conserving for like maximum yield, but like maximum naturalness, which is in some cases harder to restore to instead of just like steady state conservation of mixed age stands. Everything from bedrock, soil, water resources, both surface, underground, in the air, vegetation, wildlife, both the species and their habitat. So vegetation includes forestry and trees, but it's also understory and a lot of landscapes that don't look anything like forest, to be quite honest. I mean, there's a ton, millions of acres of Bureau of Land Management land out west, but there are very few trees per square kilometer total. But they are perfectly valid woodlands and open bedrock lands as well. And then on up into like a human and cultural resources. So what are the experience resources of the visitor? Do people feel crowded? Do they access any solitude? Do they get to challenge themselves in a meaningful way? Do they get to catch that sunrise that they were hoping for? Stuff like that. And then also the human built environment, like trails, campsites, but also big developed campgrounds. Forest Service runs 2 of the biggest campgrounds in the world, just east of us a little bit, over by Murray, Kentucky, land between the lakes. The visitor center is a huge resource for visitors. Why are they designed the way they are? Why do they look like the way they are? Stuff like that. So we'll give you a bunch of examples of those. You can see what worked, kind of what didn't work, and you're free to spot some stuff that quite frankly didn't work real well and that the Park Service could fix next time. And then above kind of the human layer, and including archaeological resources, historic resources, cultural resources, like living cultural resources, First Nations, Native American reservations. They are sovereign nations inside the United States and have a lot of rec management input. And then above that, we got air and exoatmospheric resources like soundscape, view sheds, air sheds, night skies. If you've never seen the Milky Way in all of its beautiful color, or if you've never seen the Northern Lights, for example, you're missing out. Love you, but you're missing out. Okay, and then beyond that, we're up and out into space, and we'll have a couple of weird case studies of exoatmospheric recreation, like high altitude, low opening, halo, jump skydiving, stuff like that, as another form of outdoor recreation. What to do about that, what to manage about it. Okay, so that's a big old section on different kinds of resources. And then we'll wrestle real hard with what's going on in the mind of a visitor, right? So those motivations, what are their beliefs? What are the behaviors that come out of those beliefs and motivations and attitudes? When you sort of blend those things together in somebody's gray matter, what do they end up actually doing? And then again, multiply that up by a couple of 100 million visitors across the national park system. And then again, by a couple 100 million visitors across the national forests, and see what happens. Like, what happens when you sum all of that up? So we're not so much looking at the individual thought process of like one person out fishing. We're looking at that one person as kind of an example of 400 million people going out fishing for a day, sometimes many days a year, which sounds like a pretty good gig if you can get it. So we'll get inside the visitor's head, and we'll use a lot of like wildlife and habitat management tools to actually manage the wildlife of the human, the habitat of the human, and kind of slot them in with the other living things and all of the dynamics that happen in parks. Should be pretty cool stuff. But that part might feel a little bit less like straightforward resource, dirt under your fingernails forestry, thinking about what's my motivation for being out on this trail. But we'll get into it. It all hangs together. Let's see. And then after that, we're pretty much through the semester for the most part. So we'll start winding down on this big, huge section that's broken out into a bunch of different parts, like the recreation management framework. So how do we organize and order all this stuff? How do we know what to do on a daily basis? How do we plan 5 years out with climate change changing stuff? How do we plan 5 years out? Because it takes a couple of years to build out a trail network, for stuff like that. So I'll help kind of demystify all that for you, make some kind of alien sounding things seem pretty familiar, hopefully. And we'll roll through a ton of those case studies in this section of the class, seeing how the stuff actually works. Like, what is the day-to-day work of a backcountry ranger at Canyonlands National Park? How's that completely different than somebody at ANWR, Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, and so forth. And then how to pick what to do each day. Okay, and then we got a whole list of, no, I guess I added some more. Let's see, we got 80 case studies listed. So hang on to your butts. It's gonna be a fun and fast semester. And then we'll get into that final exam, whatever that looks like, okay? So that's a huge list of stuff. I mean, that's a couple hundred total entries long. And again, we'll have over 1,000 files on the course website, but don't worry, again, I will order everything week by week for you and lay it all out in outline format in the announcement section of the course website, so you always know where to go, what to do, okay? Any questions about the content? It's a big old spread of stuff, so kind of following today, I'll post up the first set of stuff to get into, and then I'll see you guys hopefully on Wednesday outside Muckleroy or Ag 102, across the breezeway from Ag 166, the big classroom where we have a bunch of forestry classes, for our first lab coming up in 2 days. So any questions about the course content? Any input on specific parts of that sound really good, or kind of where you want to head in terms of your career, so I can kind of emphasize that stuff and I can pick those case studies for you.
I'm not really for sure where I want to go specifically in this course. I'm really new to like this kind of thing within my major because I just recently switched from just plain old biological sciences to environmental resources management. So I'm still kind of new to everything happening within this major now.
Okay, right on. That's fair. So Matt, while you're thinking, this class is, I'm really glad you brought that up, Jessica. This class is a little bit more ecologically focused. So it's like the whole integrated system. I'm thinking about all the different component parts and how they work together as kind of a big living machine, if you want to think of it that way. It's about that ecosystem perspective and the integration more than it is about sort of narrow and pure forestry management practices. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. So hopefully that overlaps pretty well with your environmental resources management switch. So how are you finding it so far?
I really like it. It's a lot better and makes like a lot more sense for like what I want to do in the future. I really like it.
Cool. Right on. I was a chemistry major, and you said you were coming from biology, but
Yeah.
chemistry is much the same way. It's kind of a more narrow disciplinary approach, and I was just the wrong fit for me. So kudos to you for jumping. I actually switched away from chemistry after I finished my chemistry degree. So maybe you're ahead of the game a couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I was a bio major forever and a day, then transferred down here last year.
Cool.
A lot of my credits transferred in as electives, so that's pretty unfortunate. Now I'm a communications major, but I have 2 geography minors, so I'm interested in this stuff, but my first forestry class.
Okay, cool. Communication. Very cool. I think then we will try to in the human as resource section, we've got some behavioral psychology that draws very heavily on communication theory and like central versus peripheral route to persuasion and some stuff like that hopefully should be right in your wheelhouse. So
Yeah,
if any of this other stuff sounds like a little bit too far out with talking about like soundscapes or night sky and minimum visible magnitude and like astrophysics and stuff like that, don't worry about it. Just kind of ride those parts out, and let's jump extra hard into the behavioral psych and communication parts of it.
cool. Sounds good.
Right on. And that really is a big deal for the Park Service. I did my master's degree research at Acadia National Park, and it was 100% about how do we communicate to visitors effectively in this particular space. And we'll get into more detail on that throughout the semester. But yeah, there's a bunch of overlap with sort of evidence-based communication techniques in this class. So hopefully that will serve you well. Cool. All right. That's pretty much it for the syllabus. It's like 10 pages long. There's an additional sort of attachment to the syllabus that I'll upload here after class is over for campus resources, and it's all kinds of stuff like the writing center and free counseling and the student rec center, fitness classes, all the way up through like student health center and student legal counsel. Hopefully you never need that, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll make sure to link all that stuff as well. Since this is such a weird semester, I just want to make sure that we mention that at least briefly, and make sure that you all know that that's available to you, especially if you're transferring down here for the first time. That's about it for structured stuff for today. What questions do you guys and gals have for me? Otherwise, I'm free to go, and I'll be here until 4 o'clock as advertised, in case anybody else is able to drop in a little bit later. And once you guys are all set, then I'll hit stop on the recording and upload this video and transcode it so it's available to everybody, the large majority of the class that wasn't able to make this for the first day.
Sounds good. I think I'm all good.
All right, cool. We'll see you on Wednesday then. Jessica,
Actually,
any questions?
yes. I work basically full time at my job. Should I just go ahead and request off for Mondays and Wednesdays for this class? Since there'll be field trips and...
That's a good question. So we'll pick it's typically a 3-day weekend. We'll pick that, and it'll probably be again in October or first half of November or something like that. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this yet, but I'm pretty sure that the campus-wide, so all classes planned for the end of the semester, so after Thanksgiving and beyond, that is all exclusively online. Like, we're not supposed to do any more field trips or lab sessions or anything like that. So for planning for asking off for work, you're golden for the second half of November. We'll pick a 3-day weekend with plenty of lead time. Probably starting on Wednesday, we'll have that conversation. So you have a chance to ask off for those days. For Monday and Wednesday afternoons, I don't know which ones are gonna have good enough weather for us to meet like this coming Wednesday. Like, we just don't know the weather that far out. I'm guessing it'll be half or less, but again, I just don't know which ones.
Yeah.
If you can ask off without it sort of impacting your paycheck too much, that is excellent, and I'll be mindful of that and try to meet in person with these lab groups as much as I can to honor that sacrifice. Would it be helpful if I did like only Wednesdays or only Mondays, for example?
I can probably get off Mondays and Wednesdays. They're pretty lenient about that.
Okay.
So I think that'd probably work out fine.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to like structure the whole class around just me, like only wanting like labs on Mondays or Wednesdays.
Gotcha. Yeah, I understand that this hybrid format is kind of the worst case scenario in terms of flexibility, like trying to hold open this time, but also needing to work and stuff like that. So I'll communicate as far out in advance as I can. And I'll ask folks on Wednesday here. And if you have to work on Wednesday, that's okay. Like, there's no way you could have had notice that we're going to try and get together on Wednesday in time. I'll ask folks who are there if, for everybody, if like things gravitate to Monday or Wednesday, then hopefully you'll free you up a little bit to work on the other one.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Anything else? All right. Cool beans. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. I'll leave the meeting open. You guys are free to head out, and keep an eye on the course website, probably tonight and tomorrow in advance of Wednesday. You'll probably get an email, or if you have notifications for D2L, that new stuff has been uploaded and it's ready to go. Okay, so check back then.